Hey guys, it's Julian, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make modern house music in the style of Josh Butler and Richy Ahmed. And what I mean by modern house music is that, this isn't necessarily a new style of house. This is music that's being made with the same ideas as old school house, where, it's like simple bass line, simple kick, and percussion groove, nice, like, stabs and simple pads and effects like that. And it all comes together based on just like a tight groove. And I think that that's really like the point of this style of music, is like, how can we do those tropes but with a modern take on it? And that's what I'm going to be teaching you guys about today. As usual, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available at the top of the description. And if you're patient on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available and has been since yesterday actually. And yeah, let's get started. Alright, so this is the loop that you just heard in the intro. We're at 128 BPM, so a little bit faster, but it kind of gives it that more upbeat, like, intense sort of feel. And the first thing that we have up here are these two stabs, which sound like this. So what we have here, again, just like I was saying in the intro, very simple musical stuff. It's really about, like, the groove of the drums and the low end and all that. And these are almost like another percussive element, but in doing so, they also fit into the melody of the track and sort of like the key of the track. So this first one here is just this audio stab. It's like one of these old school, I believe this is the landlord stab. And if you notice, it's doing call and response with the synth stab. So yeah, that's the thing about this one, is like, it's all about how this fits in with the other one. So you just want to make sure you're like, even if it sounds a bit odd when you play it on its own, we're leaving tons of space so that you hear the synth stab and then the piano stab. And it's not like you have to really strain too much to try to focus on any one. It's all about keeping things really simple and streamlined. For the actual sound here, as you can see, we have simpler, and then I just have this going through a bit of echo, which is unsynced actually, so you're getting kind of a cool rhythm from that as well, and then it's on the ping pong setting, so it's going back and forth. And then we just have some drum bus and a high pass filter, and then for the synth stab, so it's actually just playing this one chord. What you can see, it's just an A minor chord. So we have A, the root note, C, the minor third, and E, the fifth. And what I've done is I've taken the A and just put it down an octave. So it just gives it a little bit of a different texture when you like really hear that one low note. And then over here, all this is, it's that same chord just across two octaves. So it just goes doo-doo. And yeah, as you can hear on sound, this is a very dubby stab. But you can hear it works really well because we have sort of like a more chill sound with the synth stab. It's a bit deeper. And then the piano is obviously very big and in your face. So it's like the contrast between those two and the fact that they're playing call and response with each other is a big part of what you're hearing here. Now for the sound on this one, to make this into like a more chill, deep stab, we've used FM synthesis, and as you can see, it's actually a pretty simple FM patch. So all this is, as you can see, it's just two sine waves. Now the thing that really makes these is the way we have that envelope on the second one. So you're not just hearing the second one just play out. Essentially, you're hearing like that, like the amount of FM that this is doing to the first oscillator is going down with this envelope. It starts all the way up, and then it goes down, and then by the time it goes to here, you're just hearing the sine wave. And that's what creates that sound. So I'll show you, I'll turn the filter off. If we just turn the sustain up, see, it's just kind of like a, but that makes it, so you get that kind of like very subtle thing, but that little subtlety right there makes a world of difference in terms of how this sounds, and ultimately how your overall track sounds. So it's like, even when it's a really small detail like that, the small details are what's going to make up the big picture. And then we just have a low pass filter on that. You can see we have an envelope, so that's, giving it even more of a plucky sort of thing. The pluckiness is important. Like, it's important to work with the envelopes on these stabs and really dial it in, because if it's too long, you're not really going to get the right groove. Like, oddly enough, the way this fits into the groove is just as much about the placement of the notes as it is the length of the notes. It's kind of, I mean, it's the same thing with percussion, you know? It's like, if you have too long of a hi-hat or too long of a clap or a snare or something like that, you know, it's going to throw the whole groove off. And it's the same deal here, so you really have to make sure that you fine-tune the envelopes. And I'd say that's really where a lot of the work came in when I was making this. And then we just have a bit of chorus and some echo and reverb. So all three of those, just giving the sound tons of space, you know. It just plays that one little hit and then it just stops. So there's a lot of room to just let this one kind of ring out. And you can hear, you get a rhythm between this, like the delays from the synth stab, and then that piano once it comes in. And then we just have some drum busts just to make this a bit fatter and more textured. And then that is it for the synth stab. And then we have our kick, which, yeah, you can hear it's just this super, super boomy, fat, almost like a tech house kick, honestly. Like, if you played me this, I would say this was just like a tech house kick. But, yeah, it's just like a very fat 909 style kick. And that's what you want. Again, like, it's just going to be about creating this big boom, boom. Like, every time the kick hits, it's really booming. And you can feel that in the club. And it's holding the whole track down. And then that's just going through some drum busts just to make it a little bit fatter. But already, the thing is like, with this, you really want to just try to get like a really good kick. Like, what it really comes down to, the work here isn't in the actual processing of the kick inside of the track. The work, like in this kick, for example, was the layering and putting together different kick samples to make my own that was going to work really well for this. You know, but that work's already done by the time you drag it into the project. By the time you drag it into the project, it should really be ready to go to where, like, you just have to put a little bit of drum bus on it or saturation or something like that, and it's already a really, really good kick sample. And it would even work without that, but just that little thing just takes it the extra step. Then we have our bass line, which, as you can see, is really simple. It's literally just two notes. It's just A and G. So, you know, again, we're in the key of A minor because you saw that with the synth stab. So what this is essentially the A, so A, the root note, and then G, which would be the minor 7. So we're just using those two voices over and over. And if you notice, it's very much like, you know, it's just dun, 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 dun. Very, like, kind of on the upbeats and very much focused on, like, bouncing off of the kick. And so that's another thing with this style of music. Typically, the bass line is going to be really simple. Like, there's even many tracks out there where the bass line is just one note, and then the rhythm of that one note is what makes it interesting. And that's what I think is to keep in mind here, is that the bass is, of course, you know, it has to fit into the key of the track, but I would think about the rhythm of the bass and sort of like just creating an overall big wave of bass than over thinking about like how it's going to fit into the track melodically. Like, don't worry about trying to do all this crazy music theory stuff and make it bounce up and all that. You can do tracks like that, but typically you're really just going to want to make like a really simple, nice, groovy bass line. And that's just always going to carry the track a lot better than, like I said, like if we started going up here and adding all different voices from the A minor scale and just doing all that extra stuff, you're just going to throw it off. Like, it's really better to just keep it very simple in terms of notes. And then what it really comes down to is just making sure that there's like pretty much something happening at all times. Like, this bass feels very intense and full. And it really just has to do with the placement of the notes. The fact that we just constantly have this dun 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 like that, you know? More than it does almost anything else. So for the sound on this one, this is also made with FM synthesis. So this is actually like a pretty good technique that was used a lot to create the classic house tracks that a lot of this stuff is referencing, where like they would just make like a simple plucky FM bass. And nowadays, you're going to make a bass like that, but it's going to be a lot deeper. I think back in the day, it was a lot more plucky and kind of like harmonically rich, I guess you could say, because typically that's what FM does sound like. But these days, it's better to just make like a really deep bass line like this. So the way I made this one, as you can see, it's actually just 3 sine waves inside of operator here. You can see these ones, I just have the envelopes all the way up. But then what's happening is we're just adding a little bit of harmonic content with oscillator B, and then even more on top of that with oscillator C. And we're creating this nice kind of complex waveform that isn't just a sine wave, but at the same time, like, it's not just a triangle wave or a square wave or something like that. Like, it's a very unique sound that you can only really create with FM synthesis because of the way that you're doing it. And you'll notice I also detuned oscillator B just a little bit. That actually is a nice trick to make it a bit fatter, just because you kind of get a bit more, like, you hear the 2 oscillators a little bit more than if you just had no detune. And then on the filter, you can see I turned the filter down like a tiny bit. But what's really happening here that's important is the shaper. So here's without it, and with it. You can see it's really subtle, but we're just adding a little bit of that soft shaper, and it kind of fills in the bass a little bit. Like, the way I feel about this is like, so you have the bass coming out of the synth, then it goes through drum bus, and that's going to make it fat. But we still want to optimize it going into drum bus. We still want to make sure that we're making it like the fattest possible sound, because it's still going to just help it and make it feel even bigger and more full. So that soft shaper is actually a really good technique to get these kind of basses to sound a little bit fatter. And if you feel like your bass is lacking, I definitely recommend you try that, because you'd be surprised what you can find. And then we just have some drum bus like you saw, just making the sound a bit fatter. And then a compressor to side chain into the kick. Even though this plays on the upbeats, because we have such a big booming kick, like, even though it's not really going to clash, we still sidechain it because of how boomy that kick is. How much of the kick is going boom, boom, like that. The sidechain just makes sure that it's going to stay in the bass will be in the right spot. And then we have these both going through a bit of saturation together as well. So here's without this. And with it. So this is something I've shown you guys quite a bit on here, but it's just a nice way when you have a house track like this to really get your low end to work. Because something to keep in mind is that, like, it's not just about the kick or the bass separately. If it was about that, like if you were just thinking from that perspective, I guess, it wouldn't really work right. And the reason why is because, like, when somebody hears your track who doesn't know music at all, they're not saying, like, oh, wow, I love the way that you can hear the space between, the low end with the kick and the bass and stuff. Like, it's really more like you just want to create this big, massive low end so that somebody can be feeling this and really, like, the whole track comes together. It's not just about 1 or 2 elements. It's about how the whole track comes together. And this is a big part of, like, making the whole track feel cohesive and, like, it fits together. You can also see I did that with the percussion, which I will detail now. So the next thing that we have down here is the percussion. You can see we basically just have this big percussion bus down here, and then we have all the percussion inside of it. And I'll just kind of show you. So we have the clap. It's a very nice, like, mid-rangey clap. It's not too cracky. Like that clap that I had yesterday from the computer data video, which for that case, that worked really well, was not really the type of clap you would want here. This is a lot more of, like, just a a very nice mid-rangey smack like that. So that's the thing, you just want to make sure you get the right type of clap. You don't want it to be too 909-esque. Like, try to get something that's a little bit more kind of cracky like this. And then we have our tambourine and the shaker. So you can hear these are sort of like the background hi-hats. So we have like this tambourine, which you'll notice kind of starts and stops. We get like a and then the shaker is just, and yeah, those just kind of add some energy and flow to the background. Those aren't the kind of things that you might pick up on, like, right away when you're hearing it. But if I turn them off, and then I'll turn them back on, see, it has a lot more energy when these come in. So it's these little things like that that are really going to make the groove come together. Then we have our main hi-hat, which is 2 layers. This layer, and this layer. So you can hear, this one has, like, the nice kind of, like, body to the sound, but then this one has a lot of punch, so you put them together, and you get the perfect hi-hat. So that's the thing about layering. You notice we don't have any processing on either of these. You know, when you're layering sounds together, it's like, you wouldn't want to just get two of these. Like, if you had a second hi-hat like that and you layered it with that, then yeah, of course you'd be sitting there, like, trying to EQ them perfectly and compress them so that one doesn't bury the other. But it's like, you don't need to do that, because if you just choose two sounds that complement each other, that are different, but come together to create one great thing, you don't need any processing, because it's like, oh, well, yeah, of course this is going to work, because this is just filling in the space where this one doesn't have anything, and then vice versa. You know, it's a very simple thing that way. Then we have this little shaker loop, which you can hear. This is just adding some nice kind of like live sounding percussion. You know, the thing about this style is that, like, it's very based on sampling. So, like, you can't really just have, like, programmed percussion. Like, at some point, you have to have a loop in here, because it's going to give you, like, as much as you might think, oh, using loops is cheating, whatever, like, this is the foundation of how this music is made. Like, using loops is like you're bringing in, I don't really view it as cheating. It's more so like you're bringing in other textures from other places that you either wouldn't have been able to create on your own, or just simply wouldn't have thought to, or wouldn't have created on your own. But then you're getting, you know, just something that you can't quite get when you just program your percussion. And yeah, and then the last percussions that we have down here are just these little closed hi-hats, which I'll play those with the main hi-hat so you can hear how they fit in. So these are just to add a little bit more energy. It's kind of like that tambourine and shaker. Like, if I turn these off, you may not always notice it. But just having those little hi-hats adds a lot of energy. Just having like this swung 16th notes in there. And yeah, and then on the group of percussion, we just have a bit of drum bus and an EQ, which is cutting out the lows. So here is without these. And then with them, you can hear it actually doesn't do too much. Again, it's kind of like I was saying with the kick, where it's like, you have good sounds, you're not going to have to do too much to them. But what the drum bus really does a good job of is bringing all the percussion together. You know, this music is all about, like, the texture of your percussion and, like, how that kind of suits the groove. So this is a really great way to add texture and also give everything a cohesive texture, because if everything kind of sounds like it's from a different world, it's going to be weird. But this is that thing that can kind of put all your percussion that you grab from all these different places into one world and sort of under one sonic umbrella that's going to make them feel really close together. And it's going to feel like you've made sounds that were supposed to go together. But really, you probably just pulled a bunch of samples from different sample packs, and it's the way that you process them together that's going to make them sound like that. So that's what the drum bus is for. And the EQ is just to cut out the low end and make sure that, you know, we're not going to have anything to get in the way of the kick or the bass. And the overall mix will stay really clean. And yeah. So that is going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get this full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything from this video, all the percussion, all the bass line and the kick, you know, all the stuff you have, so you can get it and use it either as a template to make your own tracks, or maybe you just want some new inspiration for making tracks. Whatever it is, it's all there. The link is at the top of the description. It's just $5 on my Bandcamp, and this is a really great way to support me. If you guys are enjoying these videos, buying these sample packs really helps keep me going, so I can keep making you guys new videos every day. And yeah, thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.